You know that person, the one who knows they grew up between two worlds. They had an analog childhood but stepped into a digital adulthood. There were afternoons spent on bicycles, house keys hanging around their necks, and the be home before dark rule. Yet they were also the ones writing their first emails, talking to strangers on ICQ and feeling a strange surge of excitement at the characteristic screech of dial-up internet. Not quite Gen X, not quite millennial, somewhere in the middle, caught between two identities, and this feeling of being in between is likely about more than just generational classification. If you were born between 1976 and 1985, researchers call you a Xennial, a microgeneration, the exact intersection of two massive cohorts, and this position makes you unique, not just demographically but psychologically. Because you experienced a childhood that was perhaps possible for the last time in history, one without the internet, without social media, without constant connectivity. You had the right to be bored. You had time to daydream. You decided for yourself what to watch while walking through the fluorescent aisles of Blockbuster. Darkness had a texture at night. You grew up with real darkness, not just city lights. But then everything changed, and you were right in the middle of that shift, neither resisting it like those who came before nor being born into it like those who followed. You transformed. You adapted. You learned both languages. When psychologists speak of cognitive flexibility, you don't know what that means as an abstraction. You know it concretely in the fabric of your life. You woke up one morning facing a completely different world, and you made the transition without complaint because you inherited resilience from Gen X and learned the speed of adaptation from Millennials. But this flexibility comes at a price. And that price is rarely discussed. People who grow up between two identities, two cultures, two languages, two worlds, often experience this. The feeling of never fully belonging to either side. When you sit with Gen X, you can speak their language of analog nostalgia. When you sit with Millennials, you understand the digital references. But in neither group does the feeling of "I'm finally home" ever truly arrive. There is a name for this feeling, cultural liminal identity, and it carries a psychological burden, the weight of a need for recognition that is never quite met, where the question, "What exactly are you?" always remains slightly unanswered. And there is this, perhaps you will read this clearly for the first time. Your generation experienced an identity crisis that no previous generation in history ever faced. The world in which you defined yourself in childhood, physical, local, slow, had almost entirely vanished by the time you reached adulthood. The neighborhoods where you rode your bike home as the streetlights flickered on are now just coordinates on Google Maps. The days when you went to a friend's house just to reach them are now as simple as an emoji. You watch that transformation carrying both the loss and the gain together. And holding both at the same time is psychologically much heavier than it seems. Researchers define this as loss integration, having to step into a new world while mourning the previous one. And when grief is carried mostly unnoticed, it manifests as fatigue, a vague restlessness, or a feeling that something is missing, but I don't know exactly what. Maybe you are in your late 30s or 40s now, and maybe there are two voices inside you at once. One says, you adapted, you succeeded, you function in both worlds. The other is much quieter. You still don't know exactly where you belong. Both are true. And making peace with this contradiction is much healthier than trying to solve it. Because being in between is not a mistake. It is the position of rare individuals who can carry the best of both worlds. You are able to combine the deep attention span gifted by an analog childhood with the rapid adaptation required by a digital adulthood. You are the last generation that knows how to be bored and simultaneously speaks the language of the screen. There is magic within the ordinary, and part of that magic is right here, being able to carry two worlds at once, to hold the screech of dial-up and the noise of social media in the same memory, to know the glide of a bicycle in the dark of night and the bluish glow of a phone screen within the same body. You are neither Gen X nor Millennial. You are right in the middle, and the middle is a much more valuable place than it appears.